Things can get pretty serious over at the SCP Foundation. From world-ending eldritch beings like the Scarlet King to massive reptiles filled with hate, it can be difficult to find things to smile about when staring into the face of unknowable horror day after day. I don't know about all of you, but I could use a break from the neck-snapping sculptures and old men climbing out of walls. So welcome guys, gals, and lovers of laughter. Come on down and take a seat. It's open mic night here at the SCP Foundation, and we're hoping to give you a show that won't make you want to take amnestics. Welcome to the SCP Explained Comedy Night. Some of the funniest anomalies ever contained by the Foundation are lined up backstage and ready to show you their stuff. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road and find out which SCPs will make you bust a gut and which ones will be taking a bad joke tomato to the head. We've got a whole bucket of these babies ready to go in the wings, and remember, they can reach speeds over 100 miles per hour. So bring your A game, everybody. First up, coming to the stage fresh off of a morale-boosting tour around Site-19, you know him, you love him. He's the sweetest, silliest, slimiest guy around. It's SCP-999, the Tickle Monster. Just because he can't say anything funny or anything at all, aside from those adorable little chirping sounds he makes, that doesn't mean he can't get a good giggle out of two of you. Sure, some folks out there might say, oh, tickling doesn't count, but those people just hate fun. He may not be a comedian in the strictest sense of the word, but you just can't keep a straight face when this guy comes around. You've got to break out in a smile. Just look at him go. Sliming all over the place, doing his thing. Love that for you. Oh, and there he goes. He found a chocolate bar. Go ahead, buddy. You've earned it. Do you like prop comedy? Juggling? Do you think it's the funniest thing in the world to watch your buddy stuff as many marshmallows as humanly possible into his mouth and try not to choke? Then I've got some great news for you. Up next, we've got the one, the only SCP-2094. That's right, folks. It's Motormouth. This guy is an extremely proficient juggler and circus performer, but that's not all. He can fit anything, and I do mean anything, into his mouth. Seriously, he's literally capable of stretching his mouth up to 2 meters in any direction without feeling any pain. Talk about jaw-dropping. And inside, he's got an extra-dimensional organ made of some seriously stretchy tissue. I heard some of you laugh when I said extra-dimensional organ. That's the spirit. Watch as he swallows a luxury sports car, that ugly sweater your grandma got you for Christmas, that overstuffed chair your ex-wife left behind. All that, and he's still got room in his mouth for jokes, too. We've all heard about the various things this next guy isn't allowed to do at the Foundation. From using anomalies to alter the outcomes of reality TV shows to pranking new staff members, his antics are as legendary as the amulet around his neck that holds his consciousness and pure essence. It's Dr. Jack Bright. This immortal trickster has a taste for mischief, even when it gets in the way of his colleagues' important work. You've all been there. Sometimes a goof is just too good to go ungoofed. So what if it threatens to destroy the very fabric of reality or unleash a monster with an insatiable lust for blood? We'll all learn to laugh about it later. Dr. Bright isn't the best coworker, but he's always the life of the party, and he really knows how to command the attention of the room. Just one thing, if he tosses that amulet at you, don't catch it. Unless you think complete and total brain death as your mind and all your memories are taken over by his sounds like a great way to end your evening. Sometimes the best comedy is the simplest. Let's throw it back to the days of America's funniest home videos, when households all over the country were guffawing at the sight of home movies, of people getting knocked into pools, hit in the head with plastic bats, and falling over in a variety of different ways. It might sound terrible to say, but we can all agree, people falling over can be pretty hilarious. But what about a robot falling over? What if that robot was also convinced that it could destroy you or anything else it encountered in hand-to-hand combat? Pretty ridiculous, right? Don't worry, it's not too good to be true. Please give a round of applause for SCP-1370, Pesterbot.
I am Robo-Lord the Destructor, ender of all life. Tremble before me!
That's right, buddy, you tell him. Careful, there's a mic cord on the ground there, don't... And he's down. Like a turtle flipped onto its back. Can someone, flip Pesterbot back over? Thank you. Thanks, Brian. You're my rock. Give it up for our sound engineer, Brian, everybody. And for Pesterbot, of course. He's kind of a one-trick pony, but man, that trick never gets old. Trying so hard to be intimidating, and then bam, down like a ton of bricks. I almost feel bad for the guy. Almost, but not quite. You'll get him next time, pal. Up next, we've got a guy who proves that when it comes to leading an adventurous life and having the best party stories of all time, size does not matter. Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm talking about SCP-1867, Lord Blackwood. Don't judge this book by its cover. This little sea slug defies expectations at every turn. If you believe a word that comes out of his mouth, that is. I'll be honest, a lot of what's feeling funny about Lord Blackwood is unintentional. Sorry, my lord. But you kind of can't beat the feeling of hearing a sea slug say, "Tally-ho!" or tell you about the time he personally went head-to-head with SCP-682 on a hunting expedition. That's not to discount his ability to be funny on purpose either. If you prefer sophisticated wit over slapstick, you can share some chuckles with Lord Blackwood over a glass of his finest whiskey. Can slugs have whiskey? Well, apparently this one can. Excuse me, I'm in the middle of something. Fine, okay, geez, you can have your turn. That very insistent voice calling to me from offstage is none other than SCP-2337 Dr Spanko. Doctor of what exactly, I'm not sure. This sapient male corncrake will take your ear off if you let him, sometimes literally. Not that you'll be able to understand a word he says unless you're familiar with the particularly silly dialect of English he seems to speak. Say hello, Doctor.
It is me!
Make sure you keep your distance, as this bird's bark is also as bad as his bite. By which I mean his vocalizations are extremely loud and can cause serious damage to your ears if you're not careful. But what a way for your hearing to go out, listening to this weird little bird talk, shout, or even yodel. Don't think about heckling him either, he might scratch your eyes out. Just toss some gummy worms up on the stage and no one gets hurt. Speaking of getting hurt, do you like practical jokes? How about television? How about mixing the two together? No need to answer because our next guest is already here whether you like it or not. Have you ever laughed like you come laugh and have all the fun and laugh? Starring all your favorite laughs so ever and always may go to your life. Sorry, I don't know what that was. Something came over me all of a sudden. Anyway, here's SCP-2030, everyone's favorite anomalous TV show. Laugh is fun. With your host, Laffy McLafferson. If you've never seen the show before, then, well, you're in for a hell of a treat. It's a hidden camera comedy, a bit like Punk'd if you can remember that one, catching everyday people in wild, wacky situations, like meeting a talking dog, being shoved through a mail slot, or having their hair suddenly catch on fire. It's a riot. Seriously, sometimes there's an actual riot. I watched someone get torn to pieces. There's only one thing. This show and its mysterious faceless host want in the world to make you laugh. Because why? Laugh is fun. Don't look up the people who appear on the show to find out what happened to them after their appearance, though. You might not like what you find. That took things on a bit of a dark note there. Let's lighten it up with something beautiful, huh? How about that? Does that sound good to you guys? I know it sounds good to me. Great. Because here comes the most beautiful person you've ever seen. SCP-056, a beautiful person. Some critics out there will say that a person can't have both good looks and personality, that there's no way someone this supernaturally gorgeous could also be funny. But they'd be wrong. See, this anomalous individual changes to suit the preference of their environment, becoming whatever would be superior to the person they're currently with. They've transformed into a large, beautiful Labrador in the presence of a dog, a woman looking like Scarlett Johansson around a group of young female staff, a gorgeous and brilliant female doctor in a white lab coat, an impossibly strong male bodybuilder, a woman with cat ears and a tail in the presence of one researcher with an anime habit, a weeb, and more. So if you put them in a comedy club, they'll be the funniest one in the room by default. They can't help it. So if the hottest thing in the world to you is a sense of humor, get ready to crack up. But I hope you've got a thick skin, because SCP-056 has a really nasty attitude and tends to prefer insult comedy. Don't let it get you down, though. They're that rude to everybody. It's hard to be the best at everything in the world without your ego inflating to the size of the Empire State Building. Would you look at that? We've got a second celebrity guest in the room tonight. Another performer you might recognize from inside your TV. I hope you don't think clowns are scary, because it's time for SCP-999, Bobble the Clown. Bobble the Clown is the star of his titular television show, which features him learning about all different new skills. Of course, if you're over the age of 10, you might not have seen the show at all, since folks above that age cutoff become unconscious upon viewing an episode. So if you've missed it, I'll get you up to speed. Bobble teaches all kinds of useful skills for everyday life, such as, let me check my notes here, cooking and preparing human flesh, lighting fires without drawing attention from the police, silently stalking strangers through the streets, extracting information through torture, and, reaching SCP containment. I'm sorry, this appears to be some kind of mistake. Security, could I get security, please? Can you please get this clown out of here? Woo! I'm so sorry about that, everyone. Great comedy should push the envelope and bend the rules, but there are some lines that just shouldn't be crossed, like cannibalism and breaking security protocols. If you forgive the interruption, we'll get on with the show. Do I have anyone from Boston in the crowd tonight? Let me hear some noise for Boston. Do I have fish in the crowd tonight? Put your fins together. Yeah, great. Well, you Bostonites and fish alike will love our next kooky character coming to the mic. It's one of Dr. Wondertainment's famous little misters, SCP-527, Mr. Fish. Love the top hat, buddy. Looking dapper, looking good. Now, Mr. Fish doesn't do any tricks. No breathing underwater or anything flashy like that. He doesn't need to. Just being himself is plenty. Hey, what are you looking at? You think this is some kind of joke? I'm just a guy with a fish head, okay? Do you know any jokes, though? Sure, fine. What do you call a fish with no eyes? I don't know. What do you call a fish with no eyes? Fish! Take care, everybody. Tip your waitress. I'm going home. Mr. Fish, everybody. Great guy. You'll be over the moon for this next anomaly on our lineup. He's not crazy, he's just a little bit spacey. I want you to give a warm interstellar welcome to SCP-1233, the Lunatic. This guy came a long way for our show, from outside the Earth's atmosphere, in fact. SCP-1233 is a humanoid entity resembling a person in an EMU-type spacesuit, complete with visor and propulsion jetpack. It's no ordinary suit either. It's resistant to explosions and X-ray scans, as well as being totally bulletproof. But what's funny about all that, you ask? Some say laughter is the sound of surprise, and this guy is nothing if not surprising. He arrives on Earth by falling out of the sky before crashing into the ground like a meteorite, and immediately climbs up out of the hole and starts looking for volunteers to join him in the fight against the moon monsters. Now, the war is no laughing matter, but how can you keep a straight face when he's mistaking a cookie for a parakeet, or trying to use a dog to buy more dogs? That's star quality right there. Pun very much intended. Don't even think about it though, Tomatoes, I'm in charge up here. Up next, we have me. Me. For crying out loud, I'm SCP-426, and I'm coming up to the stage. I am an ordinary toaster that does everything a toaster is supposed to do, mainly make bread into toast. But when a human being talks about me, they're unable to describe me in the third person. No matter how hard they try, they'll find themselves talking about me in the first person instead. If they're around me for too long, usually around 2 months or more, they'll begin to see themselves as a toaster and try to plug themselves into the wall and toast bread. Not me. I mean me. I'm not a toaster. I am. Stop laughing. This isn't funny. Get me out of here. Not me. Me. Toaster me. Thank you. Finally, that was horrible. I'm never eating toast again. Okay, that's a lie. I'll probably have a piece tomorrow. Can't resist that crunch. Anyway, up next is the stuff of legends. Someone who's been in the game for years and has the most devoted following I've ever seen. Put your tentacles together and give it up for SCP-2662, Cthulhu. He's a cognito-hazardous entity, about 4 meters tall with 20 fully functioning tentacles on his back. Talk about multitasking. Cthulhu's a nice guy, no ego to speak of, but he's got a bit of an interesting effect on people. Let's call him an acquired taste. After someone has been exposed to him for a prolonged period of time, around 6 months or longer, they'll become increasingly compelled to do whatever he wants and become a sort of servant. So, to get an honest reaction, he'll only practice his stand-up material on people he's known for less than 6 months. I mentioned his fan base before, and I wasn't kidding when I said they're devoted. Without meaning or even wanting to, SCP-2662 is able to spontaneously generate religious followings about once a month. You can't pick your fans no matter how hard you try, and believe me, he's tried. Everybody wants to be a celebrity until that fame comes with strangers trying to break you out of Foundation containment and perform dark arcane rituals with you. Poor guy, he just wants to be recognized for his sense of humor, rather than his incomprehensible ancient powers and status as an elder god. You know what we haven't had much of yet today? Animal acts. That seems like a real missed opportunity for those of us who find nothing in the world funnier than an animal doing something you wouldn't normally see. A monkey making a phone call? Incredible. Who's he calling? The CEO of Bananas? Or how about a cat in a little business suit? Hilarious and adorable. Well, I hope you're not an arachnophobe, because next up we've got SCP-1006, the communist spiders. These little guys are incredibly impressive, consisting of an organized collective of an unknown spider species, all of whom have somehow achieved sapience and organized themselves into a tiny functioning government. They've used their webs to spell out propaganda messages and illustrate portraits of people's faces, as well as developing simple tools. When given alternate methods of communication that don't come out of their butts, such as ink and poster paper, the spiders are happy to make their thoughts known to humans. Don't get too comfortable with them. They're not especially fond of what the bourgeoisie humanoids have done with the outside world. Politically active spiders are pretty great conceptually, but don't let them hear you laughing. If you get on their bad side, you might end up like the skeletal human remains found in part of their central web. Can we, get these guys out of here, actually? Their little legs are giving me the creeps. Speaking of creeps, horror and comedy are often two sides of the same coin. Both rely on the subversion of expectations, building up tension before releasing it, either with screams or a bout of laughter. Just look at horror comedy as a genre, or successful comedians who've pivoted into the world of scares and shrieks. Or for the opposite side, look for some of the horror movies that once terrified audiences in the days before Technicolor. Absurd-looking plastic skeletons flopping around while an actress screams unconvincingly and runs in slow motion. Giant cardboard ants demolishing cities. Sometimes something intended to be very scary is actually just extremely funny. That brings us to SCP-2006. Too spooky. When in its default state, SCP-2006 is a spherical entity about 50 centimeters in diameter. However, it's rarely in this shape for long. All that this thing wants in the world is to scare humans, and it will shift to whatever shape it thinks will help it accomplish that goal. Unfortunately for SCP-2006, and fortunately for humanity, its sense of what is scary is not especially well formed. It tends to model itself after characters from just the type of B-movies I was talking about. Its current favorite shape is that of the titular villain from the 1953 film, Robot Monster. It's a nice effort, it really is, but when that big goofy gorilla suit with a space helmet on top comes jumping out at you, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Do me a favor though, if it tries to scare you, just humor it, will you? Just play along, it's the polite thing to do. Up next, like many of the people you see hitting up comedy open mics, this next guest has a day job he won't be quitting anytime soon. It's SCP-2598, the Traveling Moth Salesman. You may have some trouble seeing him from the audience, but he's a large yellow underwing moth, wearing a tiny little helmet. He's able to communicate using Morse code, so if you're not familiar with it, you'll need someone to translate what he says for you. No matter what you're talking about, SCP-2598 will always try to redirect the conversation towards a specialized helmet for moths, also known as a moth helm, available for 3 easy payments of $19.99. I'd tell you more about it, but unless they offer to sponsor the show, I don't think I should give them any more free advertising. Wait a second, my guest is flying away. Hey, where are you going? Oh, I see, moth's got a moth. Well, they're giving me the light, so that's my time, everybody. Now I've got to get to my next gig. I'm hosting Dr. Bright's annual karaoke contest, and I just know he's going to do all of Bohemian Rhapsody again. So I'm gonna get out of here. But first, which SCP do you think is the funniest? Let us know in the comments down below, and maybe we'll give them some more time in the spotlight. Next, go check out SCP Dating Game and Top 14 Friendliest SCPs for more fun with SCP compilations.